Hey guys, I'd like to welcome you to the Kortex Media Podcast, where we navigate the fast-paced world of automotive and more. I'm your host, Corson Schmidt. Here today, I have Gary Smith. Gary brings over 45 years of deep experience in the automotive diagnostics and training, making him a true pioneer in the field. A lifelong student of automotive, mechanical, electric, and electrical systems, Gary has contributed technical articles to major OEM publications, including Mercedes-Benz, Jaguar, Land Rover, VW, and Audi are just some. He's a nationally recognized automotive instructor specializing in electrical systems, oscilloscope use, and diagnostic strategy. Beyond the automotive world, Gary has accomplished amateur radio operator and vacuum tube audio specialist with unique experiences such as managing the restoration of the Pearl Harbor Raider at the National Electric Museum. Gary launched Diagnostics.com, a cutting-edge platform offering remote diagnostics, programming, and hands-on training support for all vehicle makes. With specialty in European cars, Gary's career is a testament to relentless study, hard work, and a passion for advancing automotive technology and education. It's great to have you on, Gary.
Thanks for having me, Corson. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys today.
No worries. I'm really excited to get into this one with all the experience you have. You've been in the automotive industry for over 45 years, but what first drew you to automotive diagnostics and training?
That's a great question. I was drawn to it in my driveway with a broken down Ford Maverick when I was a kid. And my dad told me that if I wanted to get the car running and make it roadworthy, that I was going to need to figure it out for myself. My dad was an old World War II vet and very much drove independence into us, so he probably could have given me the answer all day long, but he made me go earn it.
That's awesome. That's super exciting. And that's where it all started off, was in your driveway with the Ford Maverick?
That's it. First installing stereos and then figuring out why fuses were blowing and on to diagnosing why the engine wouldn't run. Of course, that was back in the carbureted days. But yeah, I mean, that's what lit my passion for it. As a matter of fact, as a funny story to that question, my background was I went to Cape Cod Regional Technical High School for nothing other than landscape and ornamental horticulture, and here I am 45 years later deeply involved in the car business and electronics, and literally that car in my driveway and my dad forcing me to figure out the car so that I could make it run and be a teenager with wheels under me was literally what took my focus away from what I was actually studying and into my love and lifelong and career-long passion, which is automotive diagnostics.
That's amazing. That's awesome. What inspired you to create Diagnation, and how has the company evolved since the launch at the beginning of the pandemic? Or can you give us a little bit of background because you have founded a couple companies. Do you mind just taking us through those first couple companies and then the inspiration behind Diagnation?
Yeah, I would love to, and I appreciate that opportunity because Diagnation's birth has a really, really unique story. But it's rooted in earlier businesses that we formed. My wife and I have been entrepreneurs for our whole 43-year marriage. And we were married while I was just coming out of high school. So I can say my entire adult life, my wife and I have been operating businesses of one kind or another. We started out doing stuff like landscaping and actually bought back in the early 80s a limousine business. And boy, was that a learning curve and not financing cars. But then we formed, let's just say after I got out of the dealership world, I worked for OEM dealerships for a good number of my career, and I used to wear a suit and tie and manage multi-million-dollar operations. But my passion's always been the back end in cars, okay, and fixing cars, not so much managing dealerships. But I spent the first 26 years of my career doing OEM foreman work, managing dealerships, and then I did a period of time consulting and training for the actual OEMs, a few of them. Once we got there, my wife and I formed GSS Enterprises back in the year 2000 is when I left the dealer world right at the very end of 1999 and into 2000. And we started to do a lot of consulting work with new car dealers and dealer groups, but down in the Caribbean where there's importers. So we did a ton of work with importers and exporters of vehicles, vehicle manufacturers. And I started to do a lot of management and technical work there. In 2004, we started Automaster Training. And Automaster Training was really me coming out of the management world and getting back into my love, which is the technical. And so I kind of moved away from the management consulting and started to get much more into the technical aspect of the business, teaching technicians what I knew about diagnosing cars, about the theoretical operation of systems, electrical theory knowledge, and diagnostic knowledge on the electronic end. And we operated that business for years, and it was just me. Okay, so I sold equipment and I did training and I supported that equipment. And this leads into the Diagnation story big time, right? So we did that for years, and we made a really good living just ourselves, my wife and I, selling equipment and supporting the equipment and flying and driving around the country. That map I showed you, which is pretty wild when you think about it.
That's crazy, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of dots on that map.
My goodness, yeah. That's why I sent it to you, because I'm like, okay, well, there's a unique part of the story, right? How many guys have seen that many back roads and back country towns in the United States just representing training in an industry, right? Yeah. So, and believe me, that's only 5 years, Corson. That's 5 years that you're looking at on that map. And that's since Diagnation was formed, right? So here's the story of how it was formed. So we operated this business for years, very profitably by ourselves, and we had a great base of customers, and then COVID hit. And I'll tell you the story, since you're an automotive podcast, of how this happened, because we were at the Vision Show in Kansas City. You guys familiar with that show, I'm sure, right? The Vision Show is a technical training show and exposition that happens every year in Kansas City. It's put on by Midwest ACA, Auto Care Alliance. And we were all there. And when I say all there, I mean the 3,500 shop owners and technicians that go every year, and the couple hundred instructors that show up there every year to teach the 450 classes at Vision. We were all there, and it was a super spreader event. Okay, now they would hate me for saying that, but it truly was, because if you talk to the attendees and the instructors, we all came, a good number of us came out of there so sick it wasn't funny. Anyway, so my partner and I, we move on to go to the ATE training show up in the Pacific Northwest in Seattle. And as we arrive in Washington State, we get a call from the purveyor of the show that says, dude, don't bother coming out here. We're canceled. The whole state of Washington shut down from COVID. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, and it was the first state that had gone there. And so I'm sitting at the Oregon-Washington border in my car on the phone with them going, you got to be kidding me. I just drove all the way across the country for this show, right? And it's dead. So now here's how Diagnation was born. I had a week to drive back to the East Coast, knowing that the entire country was shut down or being shut down. Mm-hmm. The vaccines, the whole thing. And by the time I got to the East Coast, I said to myself, oh my God, I'm out of business. And I'm out of business because my whole business is going to people's shops and selling equipment and doing training. And now none of the shops can hire me or accept me. I can't travel. All this is going through my mind. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So sitting out in my backyard where I sit, I literally took 10 years of business dreams from my legal pads over the years, and people that know me know I carry around a yellow legal pad. I actually carry around several. I have not entered the electronic age with my notes yet. Okay, because I'm a fossil with gray hair, I probably won't. I push back on it actually. Yeah. Right. So I took all the dreams of business of what I wanted to do with my support side and my training side and all this. And we formed the concept of the business Diagnation. Why? Because we were forced to. Because if we didn't bring something online remote, our little business, Automaster Training, was completely bankrupt for as long as and I don't mean we were financially bankrupt, don't get me wrong, but the business was unable to do business in the COVID era without bringing something online. And that was what formed up Diagnation. I had already bought the name Diagnation.com and had it parked for 3 years, not knowing what to do with it, just knowing it was a really cool name, and I bought the website, right?
Yeah.
And as it turns out, this whole COVID opportunity gave us the business to form up Diagnation by triangulating the training, the support, remote online support, and the equipment. And that triangulation of customers back to us for the sole purpose of fixing cars and having technical help when they need it is literally how Diagnation came into existence. Isn't that a pretty cool story?
That's awesome. Yeah, everything came back together for you from day one, starting everything off with your knowledge, and now putting it full circle and bringing it all together. That's really cool.
Yeah,
And I like how you guys thought out of the box for COVID, which a lot of companies did, right? A lot of companies did those conferences. They did in-class lessons and stuff, but to go through that and think out of the box and make it work is huge, and it makes a business really thrive as long as they can make it through that, something like that.
Yeah, and you know what's really cool about that, Corson, is that you're right about that, but I'll tell you this. The other thing is we hit a nerve, and we started to satisfy a need that hadn't really been there before COVID. And what I mean by that is right around the time of COVID is when the post-2018 cars that are very difficult to program, very difficult to diagnose because they're multi-networked cars, started to emerge. So it was like a perfect storm on all levels that allowed our niche market to catch on, so that because literally all we do today is just help shops with technical issues, whether it be training, equipment, support, all the above. All we're here for is to help shops and shop owners get that car out of the bay profitably and quickly without 3 weeks worth of diagnostic nightmare. And it just happened. That was the cool part.
Yeah, that's like you said, that's the tough part. As soon as 2018 hit, you have all those new softwares and different modules that are all reading off each other, and it has become a nightmare, especially with look at the electronics within the dash, look at the electronics throughout the whole vehicle, right? It's crazy. But before we get too far into that, do you mind just telling the audience a little bit about kind of what you guys do, kind of full foundation of what you guys do at Diagnation?
Sure, I'd be happy to. We do a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, I could share screen. I don't know what you want to do with this, but I mean, I could share screen and show you the website, or I could just talk about it. That's totally up to you. From the standpoint of the business, if one was really curious about it, we could go to Diagnation.com, and basically what you're going to find there is that there are 3 sections of our business that, as I mentioned before, we kind of triangulate together. And they're all centric on fixing cars. In other words, there's a ton of consulting firms out there that work on sales initiatives and business initiatives, and how to count ROs differently and how to go after your KPIs and all that. And we all know that. But there's very few companies that concentrate on the back end and the hard part of the business, which is getting that ugly, car with a ghost problem out of your bay. Okay. Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, we bit off something that a lot of people have said, man, you have a lot of guts to bite that off, because nobody wants to touch that in this business, not even the manufacturers, right? They try to stay away from it as far as they can, for obvious reasons, right? But so what we do is we say, okay, our main line or reach to the industry has always been through the training venue, okay? However, the support venue is where we do a daily touch with the customer. All right. So the way that our business works is that you start a profile on our website just like you would on Amazon.com or anywhere else you were going to do business. But as an automotive professional on the back end, this profile that you're setting up on our website is your link to technical help, to technical training. And a hybrid version of that. And I don't mean hybrid car, I mean a hybrid version of training. What do I mean by that? Well, let's say I buy a new picoscope, okay? Or I buy a new Topdon or Launch scanner or Autel scanner or whatever, whatever tool I buy. One of the biggest problems that shop owners have, okay, and this discussion will go full circle, one of the biggest problems shop owners have in making that investment is, okay, I know I need a new diagnostic tool, but 9 times out of 10, when I buy any new diagnostic tool, it sits on the shelf and collects dust, and my guys are scared of it. They're never going to use it unless they know they need it, right? And that's look, I've been selling equipment in the industry, like I said in the beginning, for 25 plus years now, and that's the shop owner's number one concern, is that thing sitting there unused collecting dust. Well, that's part of how we triangulate things back, because what we do is we offer a hybrid hands-on version of training. And what I mean by that is you buy your picoscope, you buy your scanner from us, and we do an onboarding training with your client, with your technician base, and the people that are going to use the tool. And we get them online and we log into that tool, and that's the key. Okay, so this is the hands-on part of the hybrid hands-on. Here's what's really neat. I don't need that guy to take his picoscope and come to one of my trainings in Waukegan, whatever, okay? Yeah. I don't need him to come to Montana. I don't need him to go to Kansas City. All I need them to do is to hook that tool up to a car in their shop where they're comfortable and familiar, and I can log into that tool, and my agents and our good support people can log into that tool and walk that customer through how it works. And we can provide the live ongoing training that makes sure that that thing does not sit on the shelf and collect dust. So that's one way that we triangulate full circle back. The second thing is support. Now, we could agree that the industry is full of cars right now in every shop owner's lot. Some guys, well, not in my lot. We never have problems. Okay, dude, I got you, but you're full of crap. Okay, but there are some really super good shops that virtually have no problems because they're so well equipped and well studied. But what I find in this industry is that's the exception, not the rule. Okay, most of us are in the same boat, which means we have some generic diagnostics, we have some good techs. One of the things I'll say on this podcast that generally generates a lot of discussion and pushback sometimes is the concept of A, B, C, and D technicians. Okay, because as a support company and as a support tech course, and I can tell you right now that there are many, many, many A-techs that can't diagnose their way out of a wet paper bag. A-techs, notice that, okay? An A-tech to a shop owner is a high-level productive tech, the best in his business. That does not mean he knows how to diagnose or diagnose properly, if that makes sense. And that's where our support service comes in, because when any technician of any level gets stuck up against the wall with a vehicle that they're having trouble diagnosing, having problem solving, or having problems with programming or coding, that's where the support side of our business comes in. And again, we log into the tool, we're very hands-on, we actually push the buttons and help the tech not only get the job that's in front of them done, but what I say to shop owners is every single support ticket that we do with your technician becomes its own little training class on diagnostics and on how to go after that particular problem on that particular car. And then we offer the training behind that. So we have the equipment and the equipment support. We have the on-car support, the hands-on hybrid training methodology at the shop where they can't have it so it's collecting dust. And then we back it up with very, very highly qualified support techs that know how to get to the end of that problem, even after they've heard and triaged is what I call it. Coming into our business, we triage every call. Okay, give us the sob story. My partner calls it the Paul Harvey. I don't know if you remember Paul Harvey.
No, I don't.
But the younger generation wouldn't remember Paul Harvey because he's been dead for a few years. But he was a guy that used to come on the radio and tell these really cool stories. And he'd say, and now you know the rest of the story at the end of it. Right? That was like his tagline. Now you know the rest of the story. So that's what we call it in our business, the Paul Harvey. Hey, give me the Paul Harvey here. I want to know the rest of the story. I don't want to just know what you're having a problem with. Tell me how the car came to you. Tell me what your tech did when he first started working on it. And normally we're talking to the tech, not the owner, but you get my drift. And so that's kind of the three areas of the business and how they tie together. And what's really neat about us is once you have a profile on Diagnation and you're logged in and you're live during the day, we are literally a click or a phone call away from help for that shop owner to get help with either a vehicle, his equipment, or to even maybe put a lunchtime training together and sit the guys down and learn about how to read an ignition waveform or something as simple as that. And that's the nerve we hit that made Diagnation really start to take off in the remote internet service world. It's like, wow, we can fix cars this way. And we do fix cars this way. We fix somewhere between 350 and 400 cars a month this way across the United States and Canada.
That's amazing. Now, that's one of the biggest thing that shops struggle with is all the electrical diagnostics, right? Because I went to trade school as a truck and coach technician, and we didn't learn a lot about electronics or the way the systems. They touch on it, but they don't actually teach you full in. It's all about experience and getting your hands dirty, and that's the way you're going to learn diagnosing those electrical systems or diagnosing those computers. Or if you guys are the pros, they can save the time from doing their own learning, and they speak to a pro, which makes the process way quicker, and that's what the owner's going to want. It's a quicker process speaking to someone that knows what they're doing.
Well, right, and it's funny you mentioned coaches and heavy-duty trucks. That we're starting to really go heavy into that area, and the reason is, and this is not meant to be an insult, and you know this because you've been in that field, the heavy-duty truck industry and the coach, RV industry is highly CAN-bust and networked today. Yet the shops are 20 years behind, and the techs are 20 years behind and under-equipped and under-knowledgeable in all those areas. Not by the, and again, I'm not being mean or nasty when I say that. It's just true. In the truck world, they're more about mechanical and diesels and pressures and this and that than they ever were about electronics. Yet, guess what? The whole industry is now networked and electronic. I make the point to techs. My partner Adam Robertson, he and I spent 2.5, almost 3 years building a network diagnostic process that we teach a full day and then a full week event course on. How to get down to the physical engineering level and fix a networking problem in a truck or a car. Well, when you start to get even very experienced ATEX brains. I mean, look, we went through this with a bunch of Ford dealers, and they were just blown away with what Ford hadn't taught them about how to do these networks. And guys are like, how the heck did you figure this out? Well, listen, when you have 300 network problems a month hitting your diagnostic hotline and you're having problems solving the issue, you go to the engineering board and you figure out how the heck to solve it, or you're the dumbest support network in the house. And what I mean by, I'm saying that for my own self, right? Like, for example, I had our partner, he called me one day and he was getting ready to quit. And I said, why are you going to quit? And he's like, dude, he goes, I have all these network problems and I'm looking just as confused and lost as the guy that's calling us. I don't have a way to solve them. And now I got 25 of them in my queue and I'm looking like an idiot. And so I don't want to do this anymore. And I said, well, how about this? How about instead of quitting, how about we solve the problem for us and everybody else? And so we spent 2.5 years breaking these network problems down waveform by waveform into a bucket of 5 waveforms that were primarily physical indications of what was wrong with the bus. All we had to do was crack the code of what that physical indication was trying to tell us. And what I was getting at with this intro is we've now started to show people how to fix cars off, all the systems in the car, off of the network waveform. For example, if you want to see if any of your systems in the car have a power and ground problem, you read the network waveform. Why? Every one of those systems and the computers that run them are tied to the network. Therefore, if it has a power and ground problem you need to go look for, it will be a physical indicator in that network waveform every time. Wow. When you unlock that, just that one statement, it's like, holy smokes, do I have a lot to learn, right? And that's the exciting part of what we're doing out there is we're saying, let us show you what we've learned, by doing these rapid fire See, we don't get any of the easy support cases, Corson. We just don't.
Yeah.
We get the hard cars once techs are backed up against the wall. We don't get the, hey, I just have a misfire. Can you help me solve my coil problem? No, they've already put 3 sets of coils and a computer and a wire harness in the car before we get it. And that's the exciting part of what we do, is unlock those mysteries.
That's cool. No, that's always fun. Especially when you get the text reaction at the end of the day as well. That would be one of the best parts. Like, once you guys help them find the issue, fix the issue, and you get the vehicle running, their mind's probably blown by the end of the day.
They're blown. We had one, I never mention shops or tech names or anything, but I will tell you, we had an experience, and this is one of many like this, like you say, the guy's blown away, where we had a Volkswagen that had $12,000 worth of work done to it by 2 dealerships and 2 independent shops. $12,000 worth of work. And what was wrong was a mouse house in the turbo intake.
No way. Wow.
A $12,000 mouse house. And we found it with a pressure transducer and a scope in less than 5 minutes. Why? Because we knew what we were looking for. And that is the bonus of, okay, maybe it cost a couple $100 to do a case with us, but the guy that solved that Volkswagen with us said, oh my God, all I had to do was that, and it would have avoided all of this. And I said, yes, $12,000 worth of work for a mouse house and a turbo intake.
Wow.
To me, that's a problem in this industry. That's a challenge in this industry, and it's also a problem for car drivers, car owners in this industry. It's a huge problem. And notice I didn't say independents. I said 2 dealers and 2 independents contributed to that problem before we solved it.
Yeah.
What if you're the driver of that car?
You're
that's
not going to be too happy.
$12,000 deep to get a mouse house out of the intake, right? That's part of the challenge that we have together in this industry, is solving that. And that's why I feel the business we put together just has a tremendous value to every shop owner and dealership out there. Because when you're stuck on the car, we're an outside-the-box company that's going to show you how to go after that in a different way.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. What are some of the biggest challenges and what are some of the biggest opportunities in providing those remote diagnostic supports to these shops, and especially on the complex European vehicles as well?
That's a great question, Corson, on the complex Euro vehicles. And this is going to be an interesting answer for you. This may be a very unconventional answer for you. You're going to find with us, we very rarely look at or lean on service information. Interesting statement, huh? Because you can't fix cars without service information today, all right? But what we try to do is okay, let's just say I got a guy that calls me and he goes, hey, I can't get any good information out of all data on this Jaguar Land Rover car, and the reason is that they don't publish it for me, okay? I need help. I'm like, okay, well, if they don't publish it for you, guess what they don't publish it for here? They don't publish it for me either, all right? But I still have to go figure out how to fix that car, all right?
Yep.
So this is where we will take, and speaks to the challenges that we have in the industry, this is where we'll take somebody that has gone down the DTC chart 3 or 4 times over and over because it led him in circles and said, replace known good part. And of course, an independent doesn't have a known good ECM for a Jaguar Land Rover car sitting in the bay, right? So now you're stuck, okay? How do we do it? Well, we take a combination. We do look at service information when we have to see wiring schematics, but other than that, we never look at service information. Why? Because we try to operate ourselves and teach our customers how to work on the theory of how the system works and physical law that dictates that. So if I know that all CAN buses work by physical law this way, or I know that all variable valve timings adjust the camshafts in this fashion, right? and that the chains do this and the tensioners do this, and I have that whole mechanical theory down, then it doesn't matter if I'm working on a Jaguar Land Rover car or a Mercedes or a Volkswagen or a Kia or a Chevrolet or a Chrysler for that matter, right? It's still the same control system and it works the same way. What that manufacturer calls it in their service information and how they describe its function is minimalistic if I know how that system works. And what I mean by that is there are very small changes in nomenclature and in theory of operation between a variable valve timing cam adjuster on a Mercedes and one on a Chrysler, if that makes sense. Okay, maybe they use, one uses a solenoid that looks like this and one uses a solenoid that looks like that. But they're still a solenoid. They're still tested the same way. You get my drift, right? So what we try to do in that case to deal with the challenges, our challenges are that we have techs that get stuck in what they know and stuck in what they're given in as far as information. And what happens with all of us when we get into that mode is we get blinders on like this. And we can't think outside here because the information I'm reading on all data says this. And what's worse is like in Identifix where 4 out of 5 technicians surveyed said replace the EGR valve. And this is part of the problem I was saying, a challenge for the car driver out there, is that once you get through 3 or 4 of those replacements, somebody still has to go in there and find the broken wire on the car, find the fuse out on the car, find the bad ground on the car because it wasn't the computer at all. You know, most of the programming events that we do, and this is going to inflame some really good shops, but most of the shops that have lived this will identify with it. Most of the reprogrammings or new module programmings we assist with end up with dead silence at the end of the programming because the same exact condition exists that before they replace the computer. In other words, we'll say to them, start the car. Okay, now that the programming's done, start the car, verify the immobilizer, hit the key. We'll have him start the car. We'll hear it start on the other end of the phone and it goes dead silent. And as soon as it goes dead silent, we know, oh boy, they got the same condition that the car came in for.
Yeah.
Right? And that's another challenge is that for us, is that we have to then talk to that shop that is already deeply financially in trouble with that car. They're in it for a lot of hours. They're in it for a lot of modules. They're in it for a lot of money. And then I have to tell them, sorry, that's a separate case. Now we got to diag it. I'm going to have to charge you again. And the shop owner kind of gets ticked off. And then I have to remind them gently that they've been working on this car for 3 weeks and spending the customer's money on parts and modules. It is not my fault you don't have this car fixed. And it's definitely not my fault, our fault, that it wasn't diagnosed properly. But we are here to help you to get there and to do it. So those are our challenges. And I think the biggest challenge my support techs would, that our support techs would state to you is under-equipped. A lot of these shops today, they think they can just come into the business with a generic Snap-on tool, and that's, that has a scope attached to it because the Snap-on guy sold it to them, and they say, oh, all you need is our Zeus because it has a scanner and it has a scope. What more could you ask for? You could ask for a lot more. And our support guys run into problems helping customers that only have a Snap-on because the Snap-on, believe it or not, even though it's a great tool, and boy, I'm going to get hate mail over this statement, it's a great tool and it has a great place in the industry, but it's one of the worst tools you could possibly want to support because it's not PC friendly. Okay? We run into a ton of problems with under-equipped shops. Oh, well, I got an Autel, but it hasn't been updated for 4 years. Well, what the heck do you expect? We can't, if that's all you got, baby, no wonder you're stuck, right?
Yeah.
So that's a huge challenge for us is the tech looking through blinders and depending on service information instead of knowledge on how to fix the car, and then under-equipped shops. And under-equipped shops are a massive problem. Here's the thing. 7 to 15,000 sorts out 95% of those shops. If you're a shop and you're out there listening to this, I get that sounds like a lot of money, but if your shop cannot spend $7,000 to $15,000 to bring your techs into the current modern age of diagnostic ability and testing, I suggest buying a McDonald's franchise. Okay? Like, go flip burgers for a living because the concept of fixing cars has escaped us. And that's a huge challenge in our business when we have to say to a client, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to refund your money because you don't have the tools that you need for us to help your tech fix the car. To me, that's a crying shame in this 2025 age.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, especially in this day and age with how much technology is within vehicles right now. It's pretty crazy that shops aren't having the technology, because it's just going to get a lot more complex and a lot harder to fix these vehicles, right? And if they have those technologies and those systems and those scanners, those picoscopes available for you guys to help them out with, that's going to be huge.
So yeah, so it's very interesting how those challenges come about, of course, in the course of business, while we deal with those 300 to 400 cases a month. The challenges are many, and our guys have to be part psychologist, part technician, part support specialist. And you can't believe the IT challenges we run into with unupdated laptops and Java and internet connections, and oh my goodness, half the time we're spending 45 minutes just getting the bloody connection on the customer's laptop working right before we can fix the car. And that's another challenge they have over on the shop side, is keeping on top of all of that, what I call automotive IT. Automotive IT is a huge thing, especially when it comes to OEM website interface and programming issues. It's a massive challenge. So I think those are probably our biggest three challenges: is the automotive IT. Just to wrap up that part of your question, is the automotive IT, the tech thinking with blinders on based on the information that they have, and then the under-equipped shops. I think that pretty much summarizes our biggest challenges in supporting and helping these shops to fix cars.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that when the shops don't have the right technology, they don't have the right tools, it's pretty crazy, because especially in 2025, when everything is getting so technologically advanced.
Yes.
It's huge, and especially with these EV vehicles coming out, and autonomous vehicles not that far away as well, it's going to make it a lot harder to diagnose these issues, and it's going to keep changing and become more and more advanced for diagnosing. As for industry trends, the automotive, like I said, automotive technology is always advanced, rapidly changing. But how are diagnostic tools and training evolving to keep pace with these new technologies coming out? It seems to be almost every year.
That's a great question, and that's another one of our challenges, actually, is staying on top of everybody's changes. Because if you think about what Diagnation does, we're working with VW Otis, we're working with Mercedes Exentry, we're working with JLR Topics, General Motors, MDS, and all these different, Chrysler Y-Tech 2.0. So if you think it's a challenge to stay on top of one manufacturer, try about 20. And from that standpoint, I'm going to say that the equipment is getting much more intuitive and much better. Okay. However, it's also increased in the amount of automotive IT that it takes to keep it updated and happy. Mm-hmm. For example, Volkswagen, all right, they figured out the way to keep the aftermarket on their toes is to change firmware and software every 30 days so that nobody can stay on top of their technology. Okay, that's one of our challenges when we run OEM software, is everybody's playing the secret squirrel game for their own patented, software and technology running through your website. Well, they found out now the way to play with, a lot of the tool manufacturers, just simply change a little 1 or 0 here or there on the firmware and do it on the software side, and all of a sudden you've got a whole industry tipped upside down trying to figure out how to connect to the car again, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the things that the manufacturers are dealing with too. I was on with, I was working with a group of Ford dealers the other day, and their largest complaint was that the Ford system is very undependable within its own dealer network. And what I mean by that is constant system crashes, constant software problems, having a wiring schematic and a diagnostic process that says this while the car in front of the tech says that. So we think that is, we think, Corson, that those are problems that the aftermarket deals with. But in this day and age of the 2018 high-tech, highly networked cars, the manufacturers are having the same problems within their own networks. So if you take a support company like Diagnation or Autologic or Identifix, anybody that's out there that's dialing into people's cars and working on multiple car lines, it becomes a huge challenge to stay on top of that, because what worked yesterday perfectly on the GM site just got tipped upside down this morning by an update.
Yeah.
So now I got a technician that just pressed here last night to program a car, and this morning he has to press down here. You know, so I think that is a major, I think that's something that is newer to the techs that are used to nuts and bolts and diagnosing on cars with meters and scopes, as opposed to the programming and coding world where sometimes you have 2-3 hours worth of work before you're even working on that car. Mm-hmm. Right, and that's a huge challenge, because that is not flat rate friendly. When you look in a book and it says, oh, it pays 4/10 to program the car, yeah, but it doesn't pay the 3 hours to set the computer up to get the car to program to begin with. Nobody wants to pay that. The customer doesn't want to pay it, the OEM doesn't want to pay it, the shop owner doesn't want to pay it, the tech doesn't want to pay it, and I'm sure not going to pay it, because it's not my car, I'm my monkey. I'm just trying to help somebody out, you know. And that's a really huge challenge with us in this day and age in the equipment side, like you were asking. Like, what are the equipment challenges? My goodness, they're getting smarter and better every day. But I'm going to throw a little thing about AI in here. A lot of these manufacturers, right? A lot of these manufacturers are starting to say, you know, tool manufacturers, oh, well, we're using AI technology. And let me tell you something that I'm finding about AI, early AI. Technicians, if you're listening to me now, you have nothing to worry about. Your job is secure. AI is not going to be fixing cars. I assure you of that. What AI is going to do is they're going to point you with all that they know in the internet, in the IoT, the Internet of Things. They're going to point you to that piece of reference information that you were not able to find or you didn't find. That's where AI is going to have a huge effect. But if you look at just go on Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, any of your social media sites where AI resides, okay, and drives you crazy, by the way. Would you like me to rewrite what you just wrote? No, I'd put the knuckles to you if you rewrite what I just wrote. I don't want you to rewrite. You know, here's what I want you guys to do to know when to worry about AI. When AI starts getting translations of voices right, then start to pay attention to it. But if you look at your social media and these videos that AI is translating, they can't even get human English language correct. Never mind, tell me I have a high resistance physical fault in this line because. They don't know how to analyze that yet. In other words, the AI sphere, the AI does not know how to correlate the scope waveform with physical law and this and this and this down the line to say, stop, technician, and check for that fuse right now because of what I see on the screen. AI has absolutely zero concept of that. And I think it's going to be 15 to 30 full years before you're going to have automated robots fixing cars, right? Right now, we like to think we have automated robots driving cars, and I can tell you from this company's business, that is a serious nightmare for people coming down the road. Intermittent glitches that are not solved and cannot be solved by DTC charts and technicians running down dealer information and schematics. When you have something that glitches on an electronic steering system and that car decides to turn right or left, there is not a human strong enough on this earth to stop those electric motors from going right or left. And we deal with these cars all day long that jack up their brakes in the middle of the highway because they think they saw something out the uncalibrated windshield. You can't imagine the stories I can tell you guys over the next hour on specific ADAS glitches and technical problems that no manufacturer could ever conceive of in their testing, in their manufacturing and testing and their validation. These guys all think they have the answers, and they have none of the answers. Once that car is out on the road and the environmental factors are in play, everything that engineer that built the car thinks he knows is off the table. And when I have engineers from manufacturers telling me this can't happen on this car, I literally have to laugh at them. I'm like, well, you need to come live in my world then, because it not only happened, but it happened on the car you designed, okay?
Yeah.
and that's a huge challenge, right, is getting everybody out of this thought process that computers are going to do everything from fix cars to drive the cars. Yes, Waymo's driving cars, okay? But I assure you, if Waymo has some sort of a network fault in that Jaguar F-Pace that they're running around, that car is going to crash into something just the same as anybody, the you or me, that's driving one of those cars that has that fault. Meaning, once we take control away from the driver, things get a little scary, and then once we ask a technician without the equipment and the knowledge to go find that fault, it gets expensive. So we go from scary to expensive all in one visit.
No, for sure. And those ADAS systems are getting pretty advanced now too. It's been they've been around for at least 10, just probably coming 10 years now.
Yeah, 2011 was my first radar cruise control in my Cadillac. 2011, level
That's
1.
crazy.
Yep. And now we're 14 years away from that.
Yeah.
Like 15 years if you consider they're building the 2026s right now.
And it hasn't really changed at the end of the day. It's still the same. I'm assuming the foundation is the exact same.
Yeah. Yeah, for example, if you have all these radars and sensors driving the car, okay, you've got BMW and Mercedes out there now, I believe. I believe I'm saying this right. I've seen ads where they have a washer that comes and washes the front of the radar camera, right?
Okay.
Why? Well, in the early radar cars, if you're driving in a snowstorm, it gets to the point where it says, hey, you need to take control over, I can't see the road anymore, or it'll make, like on my old Cadillac, on my 2011, it would give me a clean radar message. Well, listen, if that thing's driving itself and it gets confused, that's a bad day. And it's not even what they built, Corson. It's something as simple as, technology-wise, taking that car into a parking lot, bumping into a curb. You don't even have to bump it enough to push the bumper shocks in, okay? All you got to do is bump it so that grill just got a little flick. And now, the radar being 1 degree off at the actual camera can be 150 to 300 feet off at 150 yards out. So what is that radar camera really seeing as the car's coming down the road now? Well, if it's had that bump and nobody knows it, that's the car that's jacking its brakes up in the middle of the I-70 while you're cruising down the road at 70 miles an hour because you went by a traffic sign and it thought it saw a person standing on the side of the road, so it jacks up its brakes, right?
Yeah.
Well, for the technicians that are listening in the shops, you have to go find that problem. You have to go find that problem. And it might be the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth visit because the customer goes, we still don't have it, guys. It's still jacking up its brakes. Why is it jacking up its brakes? We've done 3 calibrations and 4 this and 4 that. We had that on a Honda. It turned out it was a bad windshield the whole time, bad refraction. These are the kind of things that drive shops absolutely bat crazy and give rise to why it's always good to have a company like us to bounce something like this off of because it's like, hey, dudes, I'm up against a wall and I need help. So
Yeah, no, and it's just something that's going to get worse with more technology going into vehicles, especially with the AV. Like I said earlier, it's something that's we're going to see a lot more worse.
Yeah.
And it's going to get a lot worse. What are some of the common mistakes that you see technicians making when diagnosing, and how do you help them improve some of those mistakes they do make?
Oh boy, did you see the smile break out on my face with that question? I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you 2-word answer to that, okay? The biggest mistakes that technicians make are 2 words, silver bullet. Silver bullet. Hear me clearly out there, guys. Silver bullet. Shop owners and techs, the 2 biggest mistakes that are made diagnosing that car are looking for and leaning on a silver bullet for an answer. Identifix, a schematic, 4 out of 5 technicians surveyed says this, a diag.net, any of these good sites that provide good information, What happens is a lot of people, a lot of techs, because how are we paid? We're paid by production or flat rate, okay? We, techs, are paid by getting that car in and out of the bay as quickly as we can. So what do we lean on as much as we can? That silver bullet answer, so we don't have to go down a 4-hour diagnostic procedure. Well, here's the problem. Most guys spend the first 5 hours going after that silver bullet, throwing parts at the car, only to find out they still got to break out a scope or a meter and fix it. That's the biggest mistake techs make every single day on every car that comes into our business that they've approached, is they've tried to jump over or shortcut the diagnostic procedure to the point that they have a silver bullet answer, and that's how you end up with a bright red barrel on the parts cannon, and a very upset shop owner that doesn't want to pay our $200 diagnostic fee. I'm just being honest. That's where it is. That's the biggest mistake, is the silver bullet. If guys would start to learn, instead of learning how to research silver bullets, if guys would start to learn more about physical testing and physical law and how electricity behaves on a scope screen, and you notice I didn't say known good or known bad waveforms, all right? That's another thing that drives me crazy in this industry. I need a known good waveform for a cam and crank on this car. Okay, great. What you going to do with it once you get it?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to look at mine and I'm going to see if it's all right or not. Really? Well, who determined it was good, known good to begin with? A tech that was already stuck on a car that doesn't understand an oscilloscope is going to make that judgment that this is a known good waveform? What are we looking for there, Corson? We're looking at silver bullets. Okay, I need a known good wave. I'm looking for a silver bullet. So I should say I'm looking for a silver bullet waveform on this or that. And that's the mistake. That's the mistake. Because let me just tell your audience this real quick, and then I'll get off that subject. The mistake, okay? You get a known good waveform and you compare it and you move on in your diagnostic. You just missed the problem on the car, because that cam and crank you were looking for to see if you had to pull the timing chain off, that car really had a cracked flywheel. And if we'd have tested it out of the gate instead of wasting 4 hours trying to get known goods and make a comparison to miss the problem, we would have seen that that thing had a cracked flywheel. We would have been fixed, and we would not be spending 4 hours looking for a known good cam and crank waveform on this BMW M20. It drives me crazy to have these guys out there posting that stuff. You know how many people are misled for hours and hours and hours based on known good information? That's silver bullet stuff, guys. Huge mistake.
Definitely. No, for sure. How important is the training that you guys offer? So if someone signs up in your website, how important is it to have that remote learning environment available for the techs to kind of get a better understanding of how everything works? Do you think a lot of shops need to get this learning, and where can they find it? If it's not you guys, is there other companies that have the same knowledge as you guys as well?
There are so many different points of reference for that question. For example, I don't know how many guys are logging in and personally teaching hands-on in the shop that way. Mm-hmm. I know a ton of guys are doing webinars, web learning, web lectures. For example, if you go on WorldPack, okay, WorldPack does web learning webinars. They're all subject matter based, which means you're going to look at an instructor who's talking through a subject and flicking slides, right? That's one method of training. Now, you know and I know, we the industry, have hundreds of sources for that, not just Diagnation. Diagnation does things a little differently. We're more hands-on. Why is it important? Well, I could go to AVI. I could go to any number of places where there are purchasable archives of training that can be done, okay, or purchased and taken, right? But the challenge with that is there's so much of it, it's no different than sitting in front of a training class at Vision. You're still in front of an instructor, you're still watching him talk about a subject and flip slides. We're not really working on cars. Why is our model unique? Because we're logging on at the shop. So first of all, give you reasons which you asked for. Why is the training that you're doing so important? If I'm the shop owner and I'm doing hybrid hands-on training with Diagnation, the Diagnation instructor is going visual with the guys and hands-on with the guys, meaning I can see them, I can see the car they're working on, I can see the diagnostic tool, I can take the cursor and say, the button is here to run this test, okay? You don't get that in video training necessarily, unless you're very subject-based, like how do I push the buttons on this tool, okay? You don't get that, right? So, what's the other thing, okay? If you don't have to send that guy out for a 4-day event, you don't have to send him to the nearest city with a hotel for the night to go sit in somebody's class the next day. In other words, if somebody comes online and they spend, say, $500 on a hands-on training event for their shop and their guys only, okay, that shop owner can organize a lunch or a pizza dinner. We're hands-on. It's a closed environment. There aren't any interruptions from 30, 50, 100 other people in the classroom. And we're doing targeted training on a hands-on level in that shop at a very low expense for that shop owner. Why? If he comes to my class in Arizona and I'm charging $500 per seat for that network class, and he has 4 guys that should be and want to be going to that class, that's $2,000 plus loss of production when I have to let him out of the shop early, plus, transportation, whatever else, okay? That's the benefit. Now, the other benefit is what we're doing with the hybrid hands-on in the shops by login is much more interactive and hands-on. Much more. Even if I'm doing a lecture-style class, what we've learned is you put out a certain number of waveforms and information that student course and can log into and work with while the class is happening. That's the basis of our network class, okay? And then the final thing I'll say on that subject is we do a really, really neat thing every month called the live study group. And any Diagnation member on any level has the ability to come in and have their techs on with us live 1.5 hours, 2 nights per month. Okay, we do an East Coast time, 7 p.m. East Coast, the first study group of every month, and the second starts at 7 p.m. West Coast time. And all the coasts and everybody in between are welcome to join either and all of those sessions. So what does that do? That gives the technician hands-on study group with our hotline. And what I mean by that is the study group is run by our hotline techs that take a case that just happened today. So this isn't like theoretical, oh, you're going to see this once in 20 years, I'm the smartest instructor in the room stuff. This is seat of the pants, hands-on diagnostic. Here's a guy that was stuck on this car for this reason, for this number of days, he had these parts into it, and here's how we helped him solve it in 40 minutes. Here's the principle of how, and that's the neat thing about study group, is we not just show them how we solved it, but we teach them the theory of how we solved it. Like, oh, well, this guy looked at this scope waveform, and because he had his blinders on, he never saw that that was a bad ground.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That's amazing.
So
Yeah.
that's what makes our model so absolutely powerful for these shops and these techs. That's my own biased view.
No, for sure. That's amazing. I love how you guys are looking out for the customer, wanting the best for the tech, for looking in the future journey for the tech as well, because that's something that a lot of techs struggle with. Speaking about the future, what are some of the goals that you have for Diagnation in the coming years?
Well, thanks for the opportunity to talk about that a little bit. We're right now scaling up with a larger number of techs on our hotline because we're starting to expand our business model into several different areas. One of which is to kind of work with some existing mobile techs on the ground that need, one of the big expansion areas our business is working on right now is working with really good independent mobile tech companies on the ground to provide them not just with the technical support and training behind what they need, but to offer them a platform to operate from. meaning we've spent 15 years and a lot of money, I won't even tell you how much money or you'd fall out of your chair, building our infrastructure to even do these support tickets, right? So what we're offering for mobile techs in our next big expansion is the ability to come operate under our banner and with our infrastructure and not have to do, that in their case, build a website and build an infrastructure to run their invoices through and to sell through and to come back and support through. That saves the average small mobile tech company, whether he be by himself or whether he's got 4 vans. That gives the average mobile tech company the ability to bypass 10 years of infrastructure and just, shall we say, well over tens of thousands of dollars in costs, right? So that's our next big expansion, is working out in the mobile tech field and getting these guys under our banner. And the reason that I think that is so cool is we all work more profitably and working together under a banner than we ever could be by being little Mr. Small Businessman ourselves, which means if we can put our 7 product lines into the average mobile tech's hands and help them to cut down their windshield time and get that car fixed faster remotely through our platform, we've just made that mobile tech industry a lot more healthy, and we've gotten that on-the-ground help to that regional area very quickly when they need it. So if we get a shop stuck over, not only can we help on Diagnation, but now we've got a mobile tech truck that can be deployed to your shop. We really, really, truly needs to go hands-on. So that and the 4 product lines that we've added recently, which we're very proud of, which are a Picoscope distributorship as well as Top Don and some of the other product lines. We've done a major product line expansion. And so that's really our goal, is to expand our reach into more shops, help more people to get better at fixing cars. You said something before you just asked me this last question that I'll address, which is, yes, every time we do that training class, it's its own training event for the tech on the support call. And here's the beauty of that. We had one shop owner call about a month ago, and he said, when we first started doing business with you, we were doing about 30 cases, 36 cases a month. They're a high-volume shop. And he goes, you know what I've noticed? We're only doing 4 or 5 now. And I said to him, you know why that is 3 years in? Because every time your head tech is on a support call with us, he's getting into our brain and learning how to do it himself, so he doesn't have to call us, which means we really are helping those technicians to get better. And to me, that was a super exciting conversation to have with that shop owner.
I bet. That's amazing. That's super nice that they're retaining that information that you've built years and years, getting that experience under your belt, and now you can share it with the techs around the world, because it's something that everyone is really behind on, and it's something that a lot of companies really need to look into, and it's every shop keeps getting further and further and further behind.
Right.
But the industry keeps getting further and further and further ahead, so there's a huge gap, and it's great. It's great that you guys are looking out for those other companies, and they're going to get cars through a lot quicker if they have that knowledge already. And that's one of the biggest things I see.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more, and I'll tell you this, Corson, what I'm trying to do is get shop owners and techs to understand that the sooner they call us for that help, the cheaper the pain is on that car that they're trying to solve. The problem is everybody has an ego, and nobody wants to spend the money if they don't have to. So if that thing's in the back of the bay and that tech and that shop owner are spending hours and hours on the car and they're not coming to an answer, give us a call. Because if you have to pass through a $200 or a $250 diag through to your customer, but we can actually get you the answer in an hour without $3,000 worth of parts, you guys on the shop end are heroes, okay? Whereas now when you wear that, you get yourself worn down and the customer worn down and the car's been in the shop 3 weeks and now the customer's threatening a lawsuit and you got all these parts in it and it's still not fixed. That's what I try to get across to shop owners is, hey, we're not as expensive when you think, if you know when to call us. And that's when you're in trouble, or what I say to a lot of shop foremen is, if you and your tech have not been able to solve that fault inside of 2 hours of your own time, that's the time to call us, not 3 weeks and 3 modules in, right?
Yeah. And they're going to save a lot of time, labor time as well, because you guys know what you guys have done the diagnostics. Your techs know what they're looking for. They know what to do. Where the techs inside the shop maybe haven't run into this issue, or maybe they're not familiar with a Euro car. They're not familiar with a Volkswagen. They're more of a Honda deal, like Honda mechanic, right? So it's huge. That comes down to the end. That's what the industry is about: is saving time to get your vehicles in quicker and out even faster.
Yeah, that's a fact.
Yeah. Are there any? I guess you kind of just spoke on it. My next question was going to be: are there any emerging diagnostic technologies or changes that you are excited about within the industry? But you kind of just spoke on that you have the 4 new products that you're launching here, or that you already did launch. Sorry. What are some of the biggest challenges you are facing while building the company?
For me, building the company is scale up, right? Scale up is very, very, and most businesses that have done scale up understand this. It's very challenging because during scale ups, you have 2 choices or maybe a blended hybrid of both choices, which is you could choose to scale up on cash, right? Meaning on what you've already earned in your company, what you have sitting in the bank. Versus taking a risk and borrowing for that scale up, okay? And it doesn't matter if you're scaling up new employees, new equipment, a new building. A scale up for a shop owner is the same as a scale up for me. It's a scary event, right? You have to lean on your business instincts to say, yes, I can make this back, and I can make it back in this amount of time. So I don't sink my own company by taking too much money from here and putting it here on a bet that may or may not work, right? So, yes, I think to answer your question directly, one of the biggest challenges I have, because we're so diverse in that triangulation of 7 product lines and support and distributorships and everything else, is the scale up. Getting enough techs on the bench so that we're managing the calls without having a bunch of hungry agents that aren't getting enough calls, so it's a very, very fine line of balance there, and I think that's one of the things that the mobile tech strategy is going to help us with, because when mobile techs aren't going to be working with their own clients that are being pushed through the network, they've got all the other diagnostic calls to come and grab from too. So that's part of the generic love that we're putting out there in the mobile tech world, is to say, hey, come join our network, because you're not just going to get infrastructure off of it, you're going to get work off of it, which is really cool. We can all share. If I have a guy that wants to take his wife on vacation or go on vacation, we've got 12 other technicians that can take over those calls as you're on vacation. So you don't have, if you're scaling up with us, you don't have to put your life on hold. You can just say, hey, answer my calls while I'm playing golf.
For sure.
Right? So it's pretty cool. But that's definitely our biggest challenge, is scale up.
For sure, yeah, and finding the right people is the most important thing, and then keeping that friendly atmosphere.
Yeah, because on our hotline,
people for a long time.
Yeah, that's a fact. We have to have the right people for what we do, as you could imagine, right? You can't just have any, and that's a thing I get a lot is, I called this company and they have model line specialists that said do this. Well, I have a problem with model line specialists, because model line specialists came off the line at a dealership. So they only know what they know, okay? Which is, on this particular car, that steering rack is going to fail every time. That's what a model line specialist knows. Yeah. That doesn't mean he knows how to diagnose cars. So yes, getting the right people is a huge challenge for us.
Definitely. And even spending a little bit of time to teach them and get them just a little bit more knowledge so they can diagnose the problems even quicker as well.
Right.
If you could go back to when you started Diagnation, what advice would you have given yourself?
Oh, that's a great question. You're a good interviewer. That's a great question. What questions would I ask myself?
What advice would you give yourself?
What advice would I give myself?
Yeah.
The biggest biggest piece of advice I would give myself is be patient, because what your spreadsheets say take a lot longer to put into reality than what your spreadsheets say. So as any business owner coming into a business, they plan, they spreadsheet, they do a business plan because maybe they have to go to the bank for financing or whatever. Whatever you put on your spreadsheet that you're going to do in sales and all the rah-rah you give yourself about how much money you're going to make in business, the piece of advice I would give myself is where I thought I'd be in year 1, I haven't even reached in year 5.
Yeah.
So
Takes time.
So, right. It takes time, it takes love, it takes energy, it takes thought. It takes a simple process of throwing something against the wall to see if it sticks. If it sticks against the wall, you stay with it and you make money with it. If it slowly slides down into a pile of poop on the floor, then we shovel it up, we dust ourselves off, we say, look, that didn't work, and we move on and we do it a different way, right? So that's the best advice I could give myself if I was going back to do this again, is chill out, be patient, and just put the real hard work in to get yourself where you need to be. The money, look, if you get out of bed, I'll leave you with this, if you get out of bed with a heart of service for that customer, the money in your business plan will flow. But if you get out of bed every morning and figure out how to make money and you're not thinking about the customer, you got a long ride ahead of you.
I like that.
That's the
awesome.
piece of advice I'd give myself.
Amazing. And with your experience, what are some of the most important lessons that you've learned? And what advice would you give to a younger entrepreneur wanting to get into the automotive space, whether it be a technician or, and we'll stick with
Or a
technician.
service advisor, or a manager, right?
Yeah.
My three-piece, there's 3 words I'll leave you with. Never ceasing study and learn your craft. Learn your craft. If you're going to be a technician, you better not base that learning on how to look up stuff on Identifix or AllData or any other information system. You better spend your energy in how electricity flows and works, how to read it, how to measure it, and how to understand it. Everything else that we're in, and mechanical systems too, right? For example, if you're going to be a new tech, before I'd worry about scan tools and check engine lights, I'd be wanting to learn how cooling system works, how brake systems work. I'd be wanting to tear that car apart and figure it out mechanically before I figure out how it's electrically controlled. And so I would say for the technicians out there, never ceasing study. And for any automotive employee, learn your craft. If your craft is dealing with customers on the service desk and selling service and writing repair orders, learn your craft. If it's managing a shop and understanding KPIs and real estate and taxes and investment and payroll, learn your craft. Okay, and most importantly, if you're going to be a technician working on these cars, never mind the silver bullet never works. Okay, the silver bullet works 50% of the time, but the other 50% of the time that silver bullet gets you off base and leads you into trouble. Learn your craft, right? Learn your craft. That's the best advice I could possibly give anybody coming into this business. Study the business, learn the business, and learn your craft. In other words, your craft of what you're doing in that business.
That's amazing. That's some great advice, and that can go with anything, right? Not even just the automotive space, any business you're in. As long as you learn it, become that pro like you did. That's where all your knowledge came from, right? You learned your craft. Now you're spreading that knowledge throughout your team and throughout the companies that you're working with. If there was shops or if there's people that wanted to find you or work with you, do you mind mentioning your website, your social medias?
Sure.
I can find you.
So you guys just look at that logo, okay? That's Diagnation. We're all over the industry. So the website, Corson, and thank you for letting me mention this, is diagnation.com, okay? That's where everything happens. Go ahead and set a profile up in there with us because it's free, and then your profile is built if you ever need us. You don't have to buy a single product to come on board and join the Diagnation. All you have to do is sign up as a profile and join. Anything else you want to do with us from there is within your grasp, just like it would be with Amazon, let's say, once you set up that profile to do business. We are Diagnation.com, rings through all social media. So we're on LinkedIn. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can find us on Facebook. My personal email is gsmith@diagnation.com. So if any of you guys as shop owners or techs have questions for me based on what you've heard in this podcast, feel free to reach out to me there, right, or through Corson, obviously. But yeah, those are the ways that you can reach us and follow us. And the big thing with us on social media is just like any social media, we need those likes, but we also need those shares to get out to other people in the network to let them know that we're here to help. Because guess what, guys? It doesn't cost a lot of money to be in our realm and get help. It really, truly doesn't. And I think you'll find once you investigate what we're doing a little bit, there's a little bit of something for everybody in what Diagnation offers. There's support, there's training, and there's equipment help. So I don't know how it gets any better than that for fixing these high-tech cars.
No, for sure. Amazing, Gary. Well, thank you so much for speaking on your experiences, your knowledge. It's been super. I've loved having you on the podcast. You have a lot of knowledge. We could talk for hours upon hours, but I think we're going to have to cut this one, and then we'll have to make another episode where we get even further in depth with the diagnosing, the diagnation, so people can learn more about what you guys do and some of the main issues that you're maybe seeing right now. And we can dive further into that. But I really appreciate you taking the time today, Gary.
Well, Corson, thank you guys so much for inviting me. I was honored to get that invite from you guys, and I'm happy to come on and jawbone with you guys anytime. And thanks so much for the opportunity to share with your subscribers what we do and how we're trying to help guys fix cars in the industry. So thank you very much for that opportunity.
No worries. Yeah, thank you. Just gonna